He only wanted to clean out the garage, but the tape was just sitting there, daring him. Why did his father lock it in a metal box beneath the floor? The tape wasn't labeled in any dramatic or mysterious way, just a simple white sticker peeling. At the corners with red block letters that read, "Do not watch," no exclamation mark, no date. Just those 3 words smeared like someone had written them with trembling hands. Neil found it while going through the garage 2 weeks after his father's funeral, sorting through rusted tools and dusty boxes, filled with old photographs and newspaper clippings. His father had never been a sentimental man, but he kept everything. Like he was afraid to forget, the box was hidden beneath a loose plank in the floor, sealed with a rusted padlock that practically crumbled in Neil's hand. Inside was just the tape wrapped in a layer of faded newspaper. He stared at it longer than he meant to, sitting cross-legged on the concrete, like a kid opening a forbidden gift. He should have thrown it away. He knew that. But there was something about it. The bluntness of the warning, the way it was hidden, like it had been buried on purpose. And if it was dangerous, why not destroy it instead of hiding it? His father had been a paranoid man in his final years, whispering about watchers and frequencies, and them, without ever saying who they were. Maybe this tape was just another symptom of the decline. Neil didn't even own a VCR, but he knew where he could get one. There was a junk shop a few miles down the road, run by a silent old man who seemed to live among his broken televisions and yellowed monitors. The man didn't say a word when Neil handed over the cash, just slid the VCR across the counter and stared at him with pale, unblinking eyes back at the house. Neil set everything up in the guest room where his father had spent his final weeks. The bed was still unmade sheets, crumpled like someone had just gotten up, dust clung to the windows. He didn't like being in there. The air felt heavier, like the room remembered things. He slid the tape in. The screen blinked once, then turned black. For a moment he thought it was blank, then the image appeared grainy, flickering like it had been copied too many times. A man stood in the center of the frame, shirtless, pale, back to the camera. The room around him was bare concrete, with stained walls and a single hanging bulb swinging slightly. The man didn't move, he just stood there, twitching faintly, his arms stiff at his sides. Neil leaned forward. Something about the man's back. There were marks, dark ones, bruises maybe, or burns. The camera zoomed in slightly. Slowly the man began to speak. Not to the camera, to something just out of frame. "They keep me here when I'm wrong," he said. His voice was flat, almost mechanical. "I try to be good, I do, but they know when I'm lying." Neil felt a chill crawl down his spine. The man's back flexed slightly, and Neil saw now that the marks weren't random. They were words, letters carved into the skin with something sharp, liar, fake. "See me?" The man turned slowly. His face was a mass of scars and scabs, one eye swollen shut. But he was smiling, not a normal smile, something stretched too wide, like he was trying to mimic a human expression without fully understanding it. "They made me watch myself," the man said, "over and over until I stopped blinking, until I forgot which one was really me." The screen cut to cone static, then returned a new room, a hallway dimly lit. The camera was moving now, as if held by someone walking forward. Neil gripped the arm of the chair. Something was wrong with the perspective. The hallway didn't lead anywhere. It curved inward, impossibly, like it was folding in on itself. As the camera turned, a mirror came into view. Briefly, just for a second, but enough for Neil to see something he didn't expect. His father, younger, maybe mid-30s, standing behind the person holding the camera, just far enough to be blurry, watching. Then the image warped again, lines distorting the screen, and the picture cut out completely. Neil hit the fast-forward button. Nothing, just more static. Then a sudden sharp burst of sound, like breathing. Close to the microphone, wet and ragged, he ejected the tape and sat back, heart pounding. The room felt colder. He could hear the wind outside scratching against the glass. The house was too quiet, too still. He stood and turned off the TV, left the guest room. But as he shut the door behind him, he could swear he heard something. A voice, faint. "They see you now." That night he couldn't sleep. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the man's face. That smile, the words on his skin, he kept hearing. the voice rasping, echoing in the back of his skull. He told himself it was just a reaction, his brain trying to make sense of something disturbing. Like how people imagine footsteps after a scary movie. The next morning he went back into the garage. He needed answers. There had to be more, something to explain the tape. He dug through every box, every drawer. Eventually he found an old journal wrapped in plastic and buried behind cans of paint. It wasn't a diary exactly, more like transcripts. Records of sessions. The first page reads, Subject A, observations. Begin. The handwriting was neat, precise, not his father's. Subject begins to show signs of resistance after third viewing. Eyes bleed slightly. Attempts to remove tape from machine result. In nausea and confusion, subject claims tape, feels alive, continues to watch. Neil flipped ahead, more notes, increasingly erratic, talk of mirror bleeding, identity slippage, and subject mirroring tape behavior. One entry stood out. Subject B. Robert Langley refuses to acknowledge his own reflection. Claims it mocks in tape, altered after seventh viewing. Self-harm begins. Robert Langley. Neil recognized the name, his father's friend. They used to work together at a research facility before something happened. Something no one would talk about. Langley had disappeared. No funeral, no obituary, just gone. Neil ran to the bathroom, splashed water on his face. His reflection looked off. Not different exactly, but delayed, like it took a second too long to blink. He stared at it, willing it to move first. It didn't. Smashed the mirror, couldn't stand to look at it anymore. That night the tape was in his bedroom. He didn't move it there. It was just sitting on the floor near the bed like it had followed him. He put it back in the box, locked it, shoved it under the stairs. But it kept coming back, every morning on the kitchen table, in the hallway. Once on his pillow, he started seeing things in the corners of the room, shadows that didn't belong. His own reflection watching him with a crooked grin when he passed dark windows. He covered every mirror in the house, taped them up. Still he saw himself. He tried burning the tape. It didn't catch. Not even a spark. Just sat there in the flames, unharmed, as if daring him. The journal offered no solution. The final pages were unreadable, scratched out, smeared with what looked like blood. But one line remained. It doesn't end when the tape stops, it ends when you stop being you. He understood now what had happened to his father. The paranoia, the fear, the way he avoided mirrors. How he stared at Neil like he didn't recognize him. Maybe he didn't. Maybe by then Neil had already started to change. Tried leaving the house, went to a motel 30 miles away, slept with the lights on. Woke up to find the TV playing static. No remote, no VCR, just static. And a faint voice whispering, "We see you." He screamed toward the TV out of the wall, but the screen didn't break, just rippled. He drove back the same night, couldn't stay away. The house felt like a wound, now raw, pulsing. But it was his. He had to know, had to see how deep it went. He watched the tape again. Start to finish this time. The man in the video turned around sooner, smiled directly at the camera. "Hello, Neil." Neil backed away. The man stepped forward. Not on the screen, out of it. Just a little. The image bulged, flickered, then returned. The camera turned again. The hallway. The mirror. But now Neil was the one holding the camera. He didn't remember filming it, but it was him. Same shirt, same scar on his arm, and behind him his father. Only it wasn't really his father. Not anymore. The final frame was a close-up of Neil's face, smiling, bleeding from the eyes, whispering something too soft to hear. He didn't sleep that night, didn't eat. Just sat in the corner of the room watching his own reflection in the black TV screen. He knew the truth now. The tape wasn't just a recording. It was a mirror, a door, a parasite, and it had chosen him. He tried to fight it, recorded over the tape, but the original always came back. Identical, untouched. It didn't want to be erased. It wanted to be watched. Each viewing took more of him. Little by little, his memories blurred. He began saying things he didn't remember, learning names, coordinate symbols, sometimes in his father's voice. Stopped recognizing his own face. The final time he watched, there was no man in the video. Just a chair, and on it a TV playing another video. A video of Neil watching a video, forever looping, layers folding in. He Screamed, but the sound came from the screen. He doesn't know how long it's been now, days, maybe weeks. He still moves around. The house sometimes eats what's left in the cupboards, writes things on the walls that he doesn't remember writing. Messages like, "I'm not me," and "the mirror lied." But he isn't alone, not anymore. There are others in the reflections. Watching, waiting, wearing his face. They smile when he blinks, and the tape is waiting too, because someone else will find it one day, someone cleaning out a garage, someone curious, and when they do, they won't listen to the warning. They never do. He told the operator he was trapped in room 206, but room 206 had been locked since the body was found, and the man on the line, he'd already been dead for 6 hours. The Belridge Motel had seen better decades. A forgotten husk off I-89, it's flickering. Vacancy sign barely kept up with the hum of the highway. The rooms were moldy, the paint peeled like sunburned skin, and the front desk clerk, Jared, didn't pretend to care. Most nights he dozed behind the counter with an open crossword and a bottle of something brown and nameless. But the night of the call, something jolted him awake. Not a guest, not a storm, just the buzzing of line 2, the red one. The internal line never used unless it came from a room. He blinked at the receiver room. 206, that room wasn't rented out. It hadn't been since the incident 2 weeks ago. The police had sealed it after removing the body. A man in his late 30s, name unknown, no ID. Just a pile of bones and gristle slumped against the bathroom tiles with his wrists like ribbons. Jared picked up, "Belridge Motel, this is." A voice cut in, raspy, breathless. "Help, please, I can't get out." Jared froze. "Who is this?" "I'm in 206. It's locked, the voice cracked. "I don't know how long I've been here. You're in the room right now." There was silence, then the faintest sound, something wet, a dragging like fingertips across tile. "The door won't open. They won't let me leave." Jared slammed the receiver down. He checked the logbook. 206 was marked vacant and sealed. His hand hovered over the police number. Then, against his better judgment, he grabbed the master key and climbed the stairs. Hallway stretched like a lung holding its breath. Carpets, stained, air thick. At the end of it, room 206. Yellow tape still crossed the doorframe, and he hesitated before peeling it back. The key fit. The lock clicked. He pushed the door, didn't budge. Inside, something scraped softly against the floor. He staggered back and ran. Detective Nolan Mathers got the case the next morning. He was tired, always tired. But this one pulled at something in him. Jared's story, ridiculous as it sounded, came with evidence. The call was recorded. The timestamp was real, 212. But the autopsy confirmed the man in room 206 had been dead since 8 p.m. the previous evening. 4 hours before the call, Nolan replayed the tape over and over. The voice was strained, the words disjointed, like they'd been dragged out of a broken throat. But it was the final seconds that bothered him most. "Please," the voice whispered. "Don't let them open the door again. They come when it opens." Nolan visited the motel. Room 206 still sealed. Jared hadn't gone back up since that night. The lock showed no signs of forced entry, but the floor just outside the door, carpet, worn thin from pacing, and something else, faint marks. Scratches like nails clawing to get out. He ordered the door forced open. Inside was silence. The room was untouched since the death. Bathroom smeared with dark stains, mirror cracked, bed unmade. But Nolan noticed a second phone on the nightstand. The internal line. He lifted the receiver. Dead. But dust around the cradle had been disturbed recently. Checked the bathroom. That's where they'd found the man, slumped and shriveled. Cause of death, exsanguination, self-inflicted, or so it seemed. But something was off. The blood pattern didn't match the position of the body. There's too much missing. Mirror above the sink bore a smear, faint but deliberate, like someone had written with a fingertip. He breathed warm air onto it. 2 words reappeared. Still HRE. He had the room sealed again. Back at the station, he dug through the report. The dead man had no ID, but they found a key in his pocket. Locker 317 at a storage facility across town. Nolan drove out there, unease curdling in his gut. Inside the locker, a duffel bag, a few old tapes and a journal. The first page read, "If I disappear, I went." To room 206. His name was Aaron Calder, 39, former 911 dispatcher, fired 3 years ago. After a breakdown during a call, Nolan remembered it made the news. Calder had kept a woman on the line as she bled out in a home invasion, whispering to her even after she stopped responding. He kept whispering until backup arrived 22 minutes too late. His mind cracked open that night. Journal detailed everything. He'd been hearing voices ever since calls echoes phantom rings. At first, it was in dreams. Then during waking hours, always the same phrase, "Help me, I'm in room 206. He became obsessed, tracked down the phrase online, found an old thread on a conspiracy forum. Motel 206, the room that answers back. Claims of strange calls. Reports of guests disappearing after checking into certain motels, always a room 206. Nolan read until the words blurred. One entry stood out: March 3rd. I finally found it, the Belridge. The pattern matches the architecture, the history. Police never connect the dots. They call them suicides, but it's the room that wants people to come. It calls them, "I'll stay one night. Just one, I need to hear it." That was Calder's last entry. Nolan drove home late that night, the journal on the passenger seat, but something clawed at the edge of his thoughts. The voice in the recording, raspy low, but something in its rhythm, its phrasing. Played the tape again and again. Then he compared it to a recording from Calder's old dispatcher days. Same speech, pattern, same pauses. It was Calder. Calder had called 911 after he died. Nolan barely slept, dreams tangled in flickering motel lights and shrieking phones. He awoke, gasping, the echo of a voice in his ear. "Don't open the door again." The next day he pulled records on the Belridge Motel going back 50 years. 3 suicides in room 206. All men, all alone. All found with the phone off the hook. No clear reason. No connection except one. Each had a background in emergency services. One was a fireman, one a paramedic. Then Calder, the dispatcher, all trained to answer cries for help, all lured in by one. He returned to the room one last time. Alana Fade sealed it, but he had the master key. Now inside, the air was colder, not just by degrees, by presence. The kind of cold that burrows behind your ribs. He left the lights off, sat on the edge of the bed, waited hours. Past then, the phone rang, not his cell, not the one in the room. The red internal lying on the nightstand. He picked it up, nothing. Then soft, slow, the voice, "Please, help, I can't get out." Nolan's fingers tightened. "Who is this?" Silence. Then, "You're not listening." The room groaned. The walls seemed to shift, shadows bent the wrong way. And then the mirror, his reflection, didn't move. It stood there frozen, staring back with eyes that weren't his. Then it smiled. The phone dropped from his hand. In a blur, he fled. Down the stairs, out into the parking lot. He didn't stop until the Belridge was a speck in the rearview mirror. He filed a leave of absence the next morning. Told no one why, but the calls didn't stop too. Nights later, his personal phone rang, unlisted number. He let it go to voicemail. The message was just static. "Then I left the door open. They got out." He smashed the phone, got a new number. Didn't matter. The calls came anyway. Voices he recognized, men he'd worked with. One from his academy days. One who died in a car crash last year, all whispering the same thing. "They come when it opens." He moved, changed his name, but every place he lived, the same pattern. A phone calla, whisperer. He knock at the door. He started writing, trying to document it, trying to warn someone, but it never came out right. He'd black out, come to with pages, shredded walls, scribbled. So he started recording himself. That's how the last message was found. Not by a person, by a machine transcribing one of his dictated journals. It picked up a voice that wasn't his. It said he opened the door, he let them out, now they're calling. Someone new. The police finally searched his last residence when he didn't show up for mandatory psych evaluation. Inside, no sign of him, just the recorder. Still running, still picking up faint voices. The investigation was closed. Official ruling: fugitive, unstable, dangerous. But that same week, back at the Belridge Motel, Jared received another call, line 2, room 206. This time the voice was calm, collected, almost pleasant. I think I left something here. Jared hung up and quit that night. But someone else took his place, a young guy named Evan who needed the money and didn't believe in ghost stories. On his second night, the internal line rang again. He answered and froze because the voice on the other end greeted him by name. "You're Evan, right? Don't hang up, I need your help. How do you know I'm still in 206, they locked me in again." Evan stammered. This has to be a joke." The voice grew quiet, sad. "I thought the same thing. Before I answered, before I opened the door." Evan didn't speak, just listened as the voice continued, softer, slower. "They make you listen first, then they make you care, then they make you open it. And once it's open, they find a way to keep it that way, one crack, that's all it takes." "Who are you?" Evan whispered. The line hissed then. "I was Nolan Mathers." Clicked the next morning. Evan was gone, so was the master key room. 206 had been opened again, and this time it stayed open.